So carry on typing, and I'm going to say welcome and hello to everybody to our first in this time zone meeting of the Try This planning workshop group. In this workshop, Viv and I will be talking to you a little bit about the background of the book, but really the majority of what we'll talk about is key number one, which is called tackle a problem. I'll be showing you some slides. I'll start showing you in a minute, but I won't do that until everybody's had the chance to type hello in the chat. But the slides will just give it it'll be maybe sort of 5-10 minutes of a little bit of background, and then we're just going to get started talking about what the groups in the intentions of the group, and looking, as I say, at this first key. So I think I'm gonna start sharing my screen now, Viv. What do you think? Probably be about the right time.
Sounds good.
Okay. Just forgive me. I've just got to do something else first. Yeah. Here we are. So can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that screen? That'll reassure me that I haven't sent you off somewhere else. So here we go. So this is the first slide with just an outline of what I've just said, really. Introductions, purpose of the planning group, and then a demonstration, and then a discussion around how you'll be able to share your own planning. So this is a little bit of information about me. My name's Tim Taylor. You can see me up there doing a little bit of teaching, and I've been working in classrooms for about 25 years. And I've worked in different places, including Palestine and New Zealand and America and other places. Not Mexico, not yet. That's one I'd love to go to. So that's me. And Viv, you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my professional stuff's there. I'm a 6th generation Kiwi, even though I've got this English accent. I'm based in New Zealand, but somehow my best mate and working collaborator seems to live the other side of the world. I've been working with Tim since about 2009, and we just hosted Tim for a 5-week tour of Aotearoa New Zealand, which was so cool. And Charles came to one of those workshops. So the professional stuff about me is there. I was an academic, and then I decided that what I really wanted to do was work with teachers, so I took the leap, and now I spend my time traveling around schools around Aotearoa and supporting teachers to use dramatic inquiry, which is what this book is based on, and it's the best job in the world.
Cool. So, so you've all got a copy, apart from a poor old Amira who's bought a copy, and then for some reason it's got stuck in transit. But everybody else has a copy of the book, and Amira will have one soon, I promise her. And this is basically an overview. Ulysses, have you had your copy? Have you had your copy yet?
Yeah, it actually arrived during this week. It was everything fine. Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. Right. That's good. I just wanted to check, and I know Elaine's had hers. So yeah, as you know, it's a book of 40 what we've called keys, that are kind of sequences that we've written to as a kind of step-by-step generate activities for learning in the classroom. The principles are around dramatic inquiry, and they're about really involving children in imaginary worlds or imaginary contexts, and then using those to generate areas of learning and to examine various different things from various different points of view. Viv, can you talk a little bit about the work of then?
Yes, just quickly. The examples, each of the keys comes with 2 examples, one written by Tim and one written by myself, not necessarily in that order. And I want to acknowledge that many of the New Zealand examples are based around local history of my region. And because particularly at the moment, we've got an emphasis on local history here in Aotearoa. So, and for that, I've worked closely with 2 local historians, Virginia and Warren Warbrick. Warren is Maori from Rangatani and Te Arawa. And Warren also provided a cultural read of the whole book and some guidance for using the keys in cultural settings that we've kind of woven through the book. And I think is a really key part of the book, certainly for us here in Aotearoa. And Virginia was the artist for the really lovely illustrations. So I'd like to acknowledge them and other members of the team. We've talked about a little bit on the website.
Thank you. So, so this is, as I said earlier, these are you know, these are the kinds of the purposes of this planning group. The first thing is that we want it to be dialogic. In this first group, it will be predominantly Viv and I who will be talking, as that's the nature of it, because we're kind of introducing this first key. But as when we get to the second session in a month's time, and then further on, there'll be much more opportunity, we hope, for people to bring their own ideas and the things that they've done with the key in the subsequent weeks afterwards. But during this session, once we get started and we start talking about the key, we're going to invite you to join in. So please do, otherwise it's going to be fairly dull. And there'll be an opportunity really to sort of see what it might look like a little bit in the classroom. We're going to talk a little bit about a wider discussion of the principles behind the keys and some of the ideas that run through the whole book. Support for planning. We want to help people in terms of using the keys in their own classrooms. And another dimension of this, which is really exciting and is something that Viv and I are delighted with, is just how it's kind of connecting people around the world. You know, it's the opportunity to meet people in different time zones and different places and talk to them. So we're hoping that those conversations will go on outside of the groups now that you're having the opportunity to meet each other, and that would be great if all that was happening. And then the other thing is about building a global resource. But Viv, shall we? We'll talk about that a little bit later, because you've got a slide that's specifically about that, haven't you? Do you want to? Can you just talk about this little flow?
Yeah, drama teacher draws flow diagram. Yeah, so this is just that we're hoping that this is how the sessions will work. That we'll meet as a group, demonstrate a key. If you can go away and try the key, and then share your planning with us via the Try This website, and then we'll come back and we'll reflect on what you've planned. That would be wonderful. Having said that, the middle two, if you planning and teaching and sharing, is completely optional, and we want you to come even if you just get to listen. But we're hoping that through that process we'll get to see what you do with the keys and share those. And I know that for me, if I was a teacher diving into a big new book like this, I would find that structure quite helpful and quite a nice provocation to have a go with the keys between sessions. So we'll be meeting once a month, and in the meantime, there's we're going to give you today what you need to maybe have a first go, if that's what you feel like doing.
So Amira, are you working in a class at the moment? Have you got a class of your own?
Basically, I changed schools because I moved to the north of Palestine. This year, no, I don't have my own class to work with. Right. But if I ask to, I can have a small group. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So
you this year, because I'm new here.
Okay. Okay. So you might get the opportunity to try out the keys with your small group then.
Maybe in the second semester I can plan now and apply in the second semester.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Right. Back on. So this first key we're going to look at is called tackle a problem, and it's about using a picture book, and as it says here, bringing that picture book to life by exploring the tension in the story. So it's the first key for a reason. When Viv and I started writing the keys, we didn't have an order in mind. We just kind of wrote them, and it wasn't the first key that we wrote, but it turned out to be the first key that we decided to put in the book. And the reason for that is because, well, a number of things really. One is that it is probably the most accessible key to start with if you are somebody who's new to dramatic inquiry, because it starts with a context already written. So it starts with a book. So that's we sort of thought that would probably be an easy way for people to get into dramatic inquiry if that's an entirely new thing for them. Also, it involves the children or the students being involved in stepping into a story, and it's a very simple and easy process. You know, it doesn't involve any sort of complicated scene building. It's just an invitation, and so it's a very sort of easy way in. It also involves, in a very simple way, teacher in and out of role, and that opportunity for the adult to represent somebody in a story, somebody with an alternate point of view or alternate points of view, is something that, as we were writing the book, we realized was something that ran as a very important strategy. And, you know, rather than kind of frightening teachers who weren't used to drama with technical language, what we tried to do was to offer opportunities that teachers could do quite easily, and then find themselves being in role or representing a point of view, rather than talking about it in the kind of technical language. And this
can I jump in there, Tim?
Yes, please jump. Yes.
Sorry, just to say, this key has its origins in my working with student teachers, first year student teachers, when I was back at the university, and I had to find a way that I could get each teacher to write an original new drama and teach it for the very, very first opportunity. And this is what I came up with, and it sort of shifted and changed over sort of 20 years, but I kind of really trust this one. You know, if you know drama and dramatic inquiry, when we go through it, you'll go, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious, but that's the point. And it has been used successfully hundreds of times by student teachers on their very first you know, go in their very first year of teaching. So that's kind of where this one had its origins. And if you know more about dramatic inquiry, you can fold other keys into this one, but it's a pretty good start.
Yeah. So a couple of things a couple of other things. One is that again, this was something that became apparent this morning, was that the length of time, so the steps that are involved in the key as we're going through them, we haven't written any sort of guidance on how long to spend on each of the steps. So that's deliberate, because that's very much part of the process of that you'll be, or you know, part of what happens in your classroom. And well, of course there'll be limits on how long you can take. So the limit that we have is 40 minutes or a little bit less, because we'll have a bit of time for talking around it as well. And you'll obviously have the session time in your classroom, but the amount of time that you take on each step is very much up to you, and obviously the needs of the learners. The other thing is that although we've written a couple of examples in the book from books that we've used successfully, and in a moment I'm going to use one of those examples. When you come to choosing a book, I mean, you might be able to give advice on this as well, Viv, that if I don't say everything, but in terms of choosing a book, you want to obviously choose a book that has a moment in it of that you might identify as a moment of conflict or tension or stress or something like that, that it becomes a sort of a pivot point for moving the story. But, and this is where I am definitely going to hand over to Viv, there is a bit of a warning involved in that.
Yes, and I think what we'll do, Tim, is we might talk about that more in the reflective part, you know, rather than, yeah.
Okay, sure.
Because we've got a slide later on that talks about sort of disadvantages of the key or limitations of the key. So maybe we could talk about that there.
Okay, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
All right then. Okay, well, I shall stop sharing the screen at this point, I believe, and start sharing the key. Lovely. Okay. So, I'm literally just gonna take the steps from the key as they are. And Amira, this will be something new for you, but other people might have seen it already. And it starts like this. So it says, when I wrap this old blanket, so I've got an old blanket here. This is my old blanket. When I wrap this old blanket around me, I'm going to be somebody in a story. So imagine as the teacher, you're saying this to the class, and then you pull out this old blanket and you just put it around yourself, something like this. And you sit there for a moment or two and give the students an opportunity to stare at you, because that's important. Give them the time to just have a look and just be there for the moment. So then you can take it off and then you can start talking to them. So the question it says here is, what did you make of that? So I'm going to invite you to say what you made of that. So this is the bit for you to participate. What did you make?
I'm going to join it too. It was.
Ulysses going to say something. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Go. You first.
Well, I was thinking of a rather mischievous character, you know, someone that's lurking for something.
Ah, lurking. Lurking's a good word. Let's go back to, let's have a look at it again. Right. So look there. What's giving you lurking then? What's making you think they might be lurking?
The way the eyes were popping out, you know, just like expecting for something to happen.
Right.
Yeah,
because all we can see is the eyes, wasn't it?
So did it make a difference when I had my glasses on?
He's wrapped up and he's hiding, or I'm saying he's. Sorry, I can't help joining in. I just love playing.
So I'm just going to keep asking you to the rest of you just to say what you can see.
Maybe something simpler, that old man maybe aging or feeling cold outside, no home.
So
Yeah,
I'll just take this off for a moment. So you can see how what we do is we start as human beings is we start to make narratives.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see how Mira, I think you gave us like 3 possible storylines there and it's just from this single action. So this is what we do as human beings is we try and make meaning out of this. So I'm just going to go back again. John, you were going to say something. Oh, hang on. Has everybody frozen? Oh, what's
Is back again after they've done that. After they've done that a few times, we might invite them to just hold on to those stories for a minute and just tell us literally what you see, because that will teach the children inference. So when Tim says, what is giving you that, or what is it that you see, I sometimes say, what is the body doing, what are the hands doing, so that they literally start to describe that in between stuff. Do you see what I mean? So what do you see? So I see an arm across a body. Yeah.
A blanket cover.
Yeah. What else?
Maybe colors. Okay, is it in this? It is describing. It is green and
Yeah.
black.
Yeah.
The back
What's
and
the body
forth.
doing?
The expression. Oh,
Ah, the body's
I
rocking
see a
back and
very
forth. Yeah.
neutral expression.
It's quite a neutral. You can also see as we're doing this that it's super handy if you do have a second person in the class, because they can run the conversation, but it doesn't have to be that way. What you can come in and out of role quite easily.
But
So what
it is not easy to separate the analyzing and describing.
No, it
And
really isn't. And
still
that's what
giving
the skill
old
is.
age is not describing, it is analyzing,
No,
right?
exactly. And even saying something like he's sad or he's huddled. Yeah, huddled is a description, but he's sad is more of an inference. So it's really interesting to see children learn to start breaking that down, because later on we'll talk about this, but that's about what good writing, that's what good writers do, right? They don't say he was sad. They say he huddled, his shoulders were hunched, he rocked his body backwards and forwards, and children quickly learn to do that. So let's look some more at this face and what it's doing. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, I'll carry on.
Yeah, let's look some more at this face. Look, what are the eyes doing?
Glasses off to make it
Eyes
easy.
are looking somewhat down.
Looking somewhat down.
I know this is interpretive, but it seems pensive. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah, what does a
going
pensive
on.
face do? What does a pensive face do? We can do it ourselves as a way of kind of the first step to articulating it. We can kind of make our own faces pensive, and there's something in the set of the mouth, isn't there? The mouth is set in a straight line. Yeah.
And the eyes are not blinking, you know, it's not, it doesn't seem like, you know, an expression that's at ease. You know, he's staring
Really not
straight ahead and not blinking, which makes me think
there's something, something very fixed in that expression and unmoving and unemotional, but we suspect emotion is in there, don't we? Thanks, Tim. Come back, Tim. I'm worried about you now. Yeah, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this character. Wouldn't you say? I know that's an inference, but I'm worried about this character.
Right.
Thinking deep, maybe. Yeah.
Sorry, what did you say, Mara?
Thinking deep. It's the way the character looks. The eyes.
Right. And this of course is show not tell. So the role, very simple action, decided in advance, and you just maintain it. Now, if you got the advantage of, like Viv and I just did, with having somebody who stays in role and then somebody doing the facilitation, that's obviously an advantage if you have somebody who can do that. But I've found if I don't have somebody who can do that, I can do it first, and then I can ask one of the students if they'll take on the role. And even quite young children, if it's just a matter of just copying what you've been doing, and if it's simple as that is, then they can do that, and then you can that means that you can step outside and take on the facilitating role, as Viv just did there. So one of the things that we found that this strategy does is it generates curiosity. So because it's a mystery, isn't it? And you'll notice that Viv isn't giving any answers. She's just kind of asking questions that elicit more language in terms of description, and she isn't providing any answers. All the answers are still hanging in the air. We don't know who this is. We don't know the context. We don't know what's happened to them or what might be happening to them. All those things are still to come. They're all still possibilities. And in this key, because it is from a story, the answers will come from the book. So Oh, sorry, no, there's another step. I forgot. This is why I need the script, because I just go off on one if I don't use the script, and the script is so much better than what I was going to do. So in the script it says, I'm going to say a few words, and these words I'll give you a little bit more information about what's going on. I'll put the blanket back on again. So I'll be back in roll. The old orangutan slumped in the corner of his cage, his face up against the wall, his arms tucked under his body. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of people shouting and thumping on the window of his cage. So, what did you hear there?
Well, now we have more of a context. We have the setting and more of what's the action that's happening around.
Right.
Provoking the provocation for whatever is going on with the character. We know.
And it's not a person. Sorry, Elaine, it's not a person.
Right.
Right. So now you've got character, orangutan, or characters, orangutan. Location, this is happening he's in a cage, and there are people outside the cage. So there are other characters. They're banging on the window. So that's events. It's happening to the orangutan now. That's now. It's in terms of time. These aren't necessarily things that he's remembering, but these are things that are happening to him as we see him. And there's a tension here, of course, around why the people are banging on the window and the effect that it's having on the orangutan. And the last of the 6 elements, which are explained in the hexagon that we use for planning, is focus. So the focus appears to be coming into, the focus that appears to be arriving here is the treatment, for me anyway, is the treatment of animals and how human beings treat animals. So this is the next step. This is from a book called Zoo. And I don't know if you've read this book, but it's by somebody called Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown is a fantastic author and artist, and lots of his books are fascinating for children because a lot of his illustrations involve little secrets and tricks and little sort of surrealist kind of things hidden inside. I'll just show you the picture of the orangutan, and then I'll read the story. Well, I'll pro-say it because we haven't got time to read the whole story. But I'll just give you the picture of the orangutan so you can see what that looks like. So here's the orangutan in the cage. There it is, up with his head facing up against the wall. And these are the people, and they're banging on the window of his cage. And this is the effect. Now in the book, you don't see the orangutan's face. And what I'm doing with the blanket, of course, is just giving the impression of somebody or something that wants to hide itself, wants to get away, doesn't want to be a part of whatever's happening to it. So it's a sort of an aesthetic thing rather than, I'm not trying to be an orangutan. That wouldn't work. I'm trying to give the impression of somebody or something that is suffering trauma and stress, and whatever's causing it trauma and stress, it can't escape from. It's trapped here in this cage, and here are the people who are outside. So, so I'm gonna, as I say, I don't think I'm gonna have enough time to read the whole story, but I'll sort of pre-say it, and then if you want to read the whole book, it's available online. If you go to YouTube, there's several versions of it being read by people, so you can see what the book's like. It is a wonderful book because it does lots of really very clever things. So, for example, it starts with this black and white. This is the first 2 pages, and it also ends with the same thing, but the other way around. And it has these pictures like this. So you've got a little mouse in a cage, and these different geometric shapes. And this is my family. So it's told from the point of view of one of the children. This is me. Oops, there we are. That's me. That's my brother. He's a bit of a pain. This is Dad, and this is my mum. And last Saturday we all went to the zoo. Me and my brother were really excited. Here we are in the car. That's Dad having an argument with someone. And when we arrived, he complained about how much it was. You can see I'm not reading the whole text because we haven't got time. We started walking around the zoo, and we started looking at the animals. And here was the elephant in the elephant house. That's the elephant poo on the ground there. Mum and Dad brought some chocolate, and Harry and I were sorry. Mum had some chocolate, and Harry and I were starving. Can we have it now? I asked. No, not yet, said Dad. Why not? Whined Henry. Because, said Dad. Because what? I asked. Because I say so, said Dad. He seemed to be in one of his moods. You see that? You see the little jokes that Anthony Brown puts in. So here, you notice now that the boys, me and my brother, are starting to worry about food, and we're less worried about the animals now. Here are the giraffes. Then we saw the tigers. One of them was just walking along the wall of the cage, then turning round and walking all the way back. Then it would start again. Poor thing, said Mum. Oh, you wouldn't say that if he was chasing after you, said Dad. Look at those teeth. Harry and I were getting really hungry. Can't we have lunch now? I asked. But we've only just got here, said Mum. It seemed like we'd been there for hours. My brother thumped me, so I kicked him, and we wrestled for a bit, and then Dad told me off. And there's the rhino. There's the penguins. There's Dad laughing at the penguins. Again, I haven't got time to read the whole thing. Then they've got monkey hats, me and my brother. We've eaten some chocolate. And then there's the polar bear. And there's Mum. And she's looking at the baboons. They're a bit more interesting. 2 of them had a fight. They remind me of someone, said Mum. I can't think who. And then we get to the orangutan. The orangutan crouched in a corner and didn't move. We tried shouting at it and banging on the glass, but it just ignored us. Miserable thing. Finally, we found the gorilla. They were quite good. Of course, Dad had to do his King Kong impression, but luckily we're the only ones there. Then it was time to go home. In the car, Mum asked us what was the best bit of the day. I said the burgers and chips and beans, and Harry said the monkey hats. Dad said the best bit was going home and asked her what was for dinner. I don't think the zoo really is for animals, said Mum. I think the zoo is for people. Now here's the last picture. And then can you see there's witches?
Witches? They're birds.
Can you see? They're birds, but if you look at them, they're gestalt because they're witches.
Okay.
Now the gestalt thing's really important because the story's neither black nor white.
Lovely
So-
book.
So there's the book. Now, you ask, so what are the problems inside the story? If you were to sort of say, what I would probably phrase it slightly differently if I was, you know, thinking, if depending on the children in the book, but it might be something like, which of the animals gave you most concern? So I'm just going to ask, if you don't mind, just to go round and just have a think about the animals that you saw. Which of them was the one that gave you the most concern, really?
Probably the dad. The dad animal.
Yeah, there's the dad animal. Yeah.
I would say definitely the orangutan, but also the tiger.
What was it about the tiger that was
Well,
concerning
the
you?
pacing back and forth, it evoked the sense that it was in a small, confined area, and it's not a natural behavior to pace back and forth, right? I imagine tigers in the wild running and hunting and, you know, roaming, but not pacing back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. That's a sign of stress, isn't it? Usually, something like that, and scratching and, you know, gnawing, all those sorts of things. Yeah. How about you, Amira? What was the animal that gave you the most concern?
I was thinking of the last picture of the child with the shadow of the cage. It's not an animal, it's a human. Sorry to say, but treated like an animal. I'm sorry to say that. But I was really shocked and hurt by this picture.
Yeah.
And after that, you have the two colors, either black or white. So in Arabic, we say there is no gray in between. So either black or white. It's really touching, this picture.
Yeah, yeah. It actually says, I didn't read the text here. It says, "Do you think animals have dreams?" It's the last words.
Let's think of the dreams of human beings first.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of be that's maybe his dream. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
How about you, John? What was the animal that gave you most concern?
Well, for me, all of them, because they're all contained, and so are we.
Yeah, yeah. That seems to be maybe the idea, isn't it? There are a lot of the, you know, like mum and the adults, they're all framed, aren't they? And then the boy, of course, at the end with the stripes of the cage. It's quite a disturbing idea, isn't it? That we're all of us contained, or we're all of us trapped, or put into environments that possibly aren't the best for us.
You know, you talked about going off on one earlier on, and then you came back into the plan. I love what you were saying, Viv, about the dad being the medium. I could imagine interrogating his position.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you can see all sorts of possibilities from opening up this world. Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this, is if you just follow the plan, that will be great. You know, you'll have a good lesson, and the kids will learn loads, and they'll interrogate the book, and in a moment they're going to step into the story. But if you're like you are, you've got other sorts of things on your mind, you could sort of think, well, what about the dad? What's going on there? If you could, you might say, I mean, I'm not going to do this bit because we haven't got time, but if you could, what questions would you ask the dad?
This is Tim going off on one. Thank you, John.
Can I say something?
As soon as you say it, your mind goes like that, doesn't it? Because it's like, well, what's happened to him?
Tim, we usually ask a question for young children, or even for teenagers, that what kind of an animal that would you like to be, and tell me why.
Right.
So if I were an animal, I would be like, for example, a bird, so I can fly wherever I want, or like feeling freedom or whatever. So this question we used to ask. So maybe as an introduction, we can use this kind of questions.
Well, certainly. I mean, if you think about where a question like that might fit within this context. So
a bird can be caught, put in a cage, and just for a show, or an animal in the circus, also in a cage.
Yeah.
Somebody is controlling the same.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So
the kind of philosophical discussion we're having right now, and if you look at the session we did with New Zealand teachers, the same thing happened. This is the point. This is the point with dramatic inquiry. It's not just to do drama and make pictures and be embodied and things. It is to have the philosophy for children, the thinking, the talking, the deep, the going off on when I teased Tim about that. But we sit with this stuff. Dorothy Heathcote used to say, 1 minute in, 5 minutes out. We sit with these big conversations because it's the big point. And if this tool is working, you won't really care about the tool anymore right now. You'll care about this family and this is the sign of success. So just pointing that out. And the steps might say discuss, but the discuss might be 25 minutes of discuss. And so it should be, and complexify and grapple, and don't settle for easy answers. And if children go for an easy answer, throw in a what about, because we're deeply in inquiry and grappling. This is what we go for. We want frowns on our faces. Going,
Elaine,
can I ask you a question?
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Elaine. Yes.
About a choice that you made. So I thought it was extremely effective for the first prompt to be looking at the orangutan. But I know that when I'm thinking about things like, I rarely will, I probably would refrain from putting, having the character be one of the animals, right? You have this whole family and this family dynamic. And I know that probably if I were planning this, my tendency would have been to choose one of those characters. So, but I thought it was so effective. So can I just ask what your process was, what your thinking process was to choose the orangutan?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I'm going to have to examine it now. Because I'm not sure what my thinking process is. I think what I tend to do now. God, that's such a good question. So, oh gosh, that's really, it made me really think hard now. So I think what I do is that I look for the moment that of concern within the narrative. So because one of the things that I've sort of learned as time goes on is it's not so much about the storyline or what's happening in terms of events one after another and things that happen. It's more about generating a sense of concern and investment in the story from the children, and then seeing what happens from that moment. We haven't got a huge amount of time, but one very quick example of that was when Viv and I were working in New Zealand, and we were in one classroom where we were really having quite a lot of trouble getting the children invested. It was to do with a similar kind of context to this, and we tried various different sort of ways of doing things, and the thing that really unlocked the whole thing and changed the whole dynamic in the room was an elephant that had a calf and was pregnant, and there was something wrong with it. Now, it was an idea that came from the children, but it was that moment that was the thing that the children got invested in, because they were really concerned about saving the elephant and its calf's life. So the people for me, not their psychological conditions or why the dad is as he is, but them as people is less important to me than the context of the animals and the situation that they're in. Because I mean, the question about why people visit zoos, and you know, the question about are we all trapped in some way in our lives, is interesting, but it's not really a moment of concern. I think the moment of concern is particularly that picture I find very affecting, and I know that I can represent that quite straightforwardly and simply with that blanket over my face, and that's really why I go there. But it's such a it's such a question that requires an awful lot more thinking than we have.
Can I quickly jump in? I wanted to say, Elaine, that you could represent one of those humans. You know, I can imagine a student teacher choosing the boy at the end, for example, and that body shape, or the mum just staring at the animals. I think Tim has picked up on what the author did, which is that the book has an arc, and then there's a turning point where we really feel, you know, and I think that is in that picture. That so often it's about the feel of the book, and there's a turning point, and there's lots of tensions in that book, but there's that one where we kind of go dark. We just go dark there for the first time. And one of the things that planning with this tool does is help you to learn how picture books work and help you to spot that sort of turning point moment. We've had sessions, and we can have them again as part of this group. We can have it next week, when, you know, next month when we come back, and where you sort of can feel that turning point, and you get quite good at it after a while. So I think that's kind of also what you did, Tim. You're following Anthony Brown's little cue there. But you could take other roles, and one of the things I often do with teachers is get them to see how, you know, flex their muscles and see how they could be other people. I just wanted to say something about the tool, because we're always learning. And a point of difference between Tim and I is I don't actually read past the point of, when I do this, I don't read past the point of introducing that, you know, when we get to the moment that I've represented at the start, we stop the book. And then we just talk about the problem that's in that moment. So I can see that with this one, we actually get a much broader conversation by finishing the book, zooming out and saying, what are the problems here, and who are you concerned about? Can you imagine a version of this where we just look at that orangutan and we say, what's the problem? And we're kind of more focused on that. So it's interesting to see how you've slightly adapted it from what I like to do.
Because I think the problem for me is to do with the running of the zoo and why it's been run. Of course, rather than that particular moment. But it's because these flexibilities.
If you followed the recipe, though, if you just went, okay, read up to the moment in the story, and you read up to that moment, and you said, so what's the problem here?
Yeah,
children would say that orangutan's having a terrible time, so it would still work. That's why I like these sessions. We can talk about the recipe, and we can talk about the ways that we might work slightly differently.
So I'm looking at the time, Viv, and we haven't got very much time. So should we go back to the slides, and then we can talk about
Sure. So there are further steps in the key. Shall I just quickly whip through those, Tim, since they're in my head?
Please go ahead.
Talk you through. So in terms of drama, we've dropped into the tension, haven't we? That's what we do. We start with the tension, which a book doesn't do, but the lesson does. Drop into the tension, read up to the point of the tension, ask the children what's the problem. Ask the children what the problem is, because sometimes that needs a bit of discussion. And then what I used to do was get into resolving the problem, but then I realized that there's an important step, which we're not going to talk about, are we, Tim? Which is the children have to be in the story too, otherwise it's just at arm's length. So at that point, inviting the children to make a picture from the book that shows an aspect of this problem, and it might be as simple as reproducing what they've seen the teacher doing, or it might be that they put the parents and the family into it, or so we create that image so that they've, you know. And when we did this in the other session, if you go and look at the other session, we actually do that because we've, you know, there's a shift in your emotion, there's a shift in your investment when you've been in it rather than just thinking about it or watching it. And then we invite the children to suggest ways forward. It's not solutions, because most of these complex problems are complex, and that's why we called it tackle a problem rather than fix everything. Or so solutions are suggested, put on the board, and everything that comes at you, every way forward is valid, but some are better than others. So you screen those. You might talk to the children about why we wouldn't do something violent, you know, that sort of thing. And then again, very simply, because it's a picture book, we can suggest to the children that they then create one of those images as if that picture book had been finished with their solution. So it's a way of offering multiple open-ended. You're messing about with the story usually, because you're either creating something that happens beyond the story or an alternative ending. And then if the children are interested, you can read the way that the author ended the story. So it's really neat. The only drama conventions are a moment in time, a still image, and those are framed as images from the picture book. Hope that makes sense. It's never as easy to explain as to do, but in the time we've got, and it takes a minimum of probably 40 minutes to teach that little key, and it could be a whole morning, could be a whole day. Thanks, Tim.
No, and for those of you interested in Mantle the Expert, it's also, of course, it could lead into Mantle the Expert. You could imagine the children taking on the point of view of a team of people who are coming in to you know, work in the zoo, help the animals, look at them, find out what's going on in the zoo, talk to the people who are running the zoo. I mean, it could go on and on and on and on, but it's, yeah, as Viv says, it's got both that. It could be a short one-off session, just look at a book and then open that up, and that will work brilliantly, or it also could lead into a much bigger and longer inquiry. So, Viv, did you want to talk about, I've got that slide up about the benefits. Did you want to?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm sure people here could talk about what benefits are, but for me, they're about that inference. You know, the literacy, the oracy, I like how it it gives children a different relationship to what a picture book is. A picture book in this experience is a story, an experience written down, you know, and aesthetically managed, and it teaches children that stories are conditional, that, you know, someone has made an ending and that we can also make endings. It you know, for teachers who are very busy, this sort of key can be their literacy program for the day, you know. So I think the links to literacy are really important. I'll just quickly talk about the limitations, which is that by emphasizing,
sorry, Viv, just one more thing that's important in terms of the benefits of it is that it gives children the opportunity to stare. So we don't you know, it's not polite to stare at people, and it's certainly not polite to talk in someone's company about what their facial expressions or their body language means. And but in this work, you can do that. And I've found that that's an enormous benefit to children, because it's often very difficult to actually read what people's body language is telling us. And there's a whole language going on there, and this strategy and drama in general gives us that capacity. So I think it's really important.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've just recently went through this key with some beginner teachers or some teachers new to this in Northland, and their whole focus at the moment is trauma-informed teaching and emotional knowledge, and teaching children to read and understand emotions. And of course, without something like this, we resort to sort of emojis on cards or discussions about this is, and they're most. The biggest response to this key for them wasn't about the literacy advantages. It was about the opportunity to teach emotional, you know, how people are feeling and inferring from facial expressions and that kind of thing in a meaningful context and in a safe way. So yeah, I'm so glad you interrupted me to say that. You did want me to quickly talk about the limitations. It's just worth noting that a book is a very subtle thing, and Anthony Brown's book is very subtle, and it's got that tension in it as part of a broader sweep of a beautiful aesthetic. And sometimes by emphasizing that tension, we kind of throw the feel of the book out. So I'll perhaps leave you to go and look at session 1, where we talk for a little bit about culturally what it does with a Maori story that's got a wee bit of a tension in it, what it does to kind of emphasize that tension rather than emphasizing the beautiful whole. We kind of have to acknowledge that we're changing the feel of an artist's work by doing that. So I think handling with care and just being aware of that, and maybe even talking to the children about that at a meta level if they're older children. So, you know, you do something by emphasizing tension, but that's got some positives and some limitations, as everything does. That was all I wanted to say on that.
So we've reached 8 o'clock. That just flew by, didn't it? It's like, you know, which we knew it would. So is there anything more, Viv, that we want to say, or do we want to just give people the opportunity to ask any questions if they have any before we go?
Yeah, well, I guess we could refer people to the other session for the information about sharing the planning and that kind of thing. Just we will open it up for discussion, but just to quickly say that we really hope you'll have a go with the planning. And if you visit trythis.org, there's a place where you can see a whole lot of other teachers' ideas, which I think is one of the most exciting things about this book, and B, upload your own ideas into a Google form so that we can drop them into the shared resource. If you want more detail on that, perhaps visit the other session and we'll talk that through. But yeah, it would be great to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, great. So did anybody, before we close, did anybody want to ask or discuss anything?
You reminded me of the whole powerful business of being in role in just a tiny moment.
Yeah.
And whether you were, you know, and then what was interesting for me was the way you edged into role with, this is me, this is my dad, my brother, and I was with you seeing those people, and then you edged away and into narrator.
Yes.
On that, and going in and out of role. Thank you for reminding me.
Thanks, John.
About that.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah.
Tim, if possible, don't make it the first and last meeting.
No.
It was really useful. It was only 1 hour, but it was really useful, reminding us of everything and new ideas, new questions that we will keep thinking of. So let it be once a month, let's say, once in 2 months.
That's what we're doing.
That's exactly what we're doing. Yes.
There are 40 of these keys, so there are a lot of these meetings to come.
Excellent.
Yeah.
You're going to get very bored.
Maybe we share more ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after I receive my book.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Mira, that the other one that we did this morning, earlier today, or yesterday for Viv, we put that video up on the website. If you go to the website and you look under resources, there's a link there for videos, and that's very different. I mean, we talk about the same kinds of things. We talk about the key, but Viv goes through a completely different context. And there's all kinds of other things that are happening in that one as well. So we
can benefit from both.
Yeah, we're planning to do one every month. That's the plan.
Excellent. Yeah.
And when we meet again, the first thing we will do is hear from people who've trialed this key. So we'll reflect a little more on this key, and then we'll introduce the second key. which is called Experience the Action. And it's, whereas this is a good one for looking at books with tension, the next one is excellent for looking at books with lots of action and lots of doing. And it's a very simple key, and it's great for younger kids, the next one.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was really useful, really.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, the book is a tremendous resource, and it's just so well organized and so practical, and I think easy to use. And I'm really excited about it, and having other teachers try it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for this session. I know the main objective is directed towards children. My line of work is with adults and other things, and I'm seeing enormous potential in this. I mean, I'm imagining how beneficial this key would be when working with families with depressed persons, for instance, and having them a way to approach on the sickness of the person and discovering new ways to approach towards them, for instance. I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Thanks. I think a very important dimension of this that perhaps we didn't highlight, which now we definitely should, is the way that you can use stories to distance subjects that you don't want to deal, you wouldn't want to deal with personally, because they'd be much too close to people. But there's a kind of this thing called frame distance, which just kind of means that you can talk about the kinds of things, the kinds of subjects around loneliness and lack of agency, and the way that the animals are imprisoned, but also, as we started to talk about, how the humans are experiencing trauma as well. But obviously you're talking about them, and obviously you're also discussing the same kinds of things that might be immediately affecting people. So I think that's a very important thing that you've highlighted there.
I'm so excited to hear about how you might use it with adults. Do come back and tell us. I've done a bit of work with adults with intellectual disability, and often these strategies work super well. And I guess it just worked with us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Sure. I'll do.
Great. Fantastic. All right. Shall we, John, are you going up to Aberdeen next week? Are you in Aberdeen for the conference?
No, unfortunately. I'm starting a piece of work in Doncaster next week.
Are you? So, okay. All right. Well,
so I shall have to
be up there. All right.
I have to be
It
there.
looks fascinating. You've written about it in the chat, John.
Yes,
it
I
looks
just
really
did.
fascinating.
Yeah,
come back and tell us about it.
That's the research question from the partner university that I'm working with. So
right.
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to hear that. Okay, so so the next one is in a month's time. We'll send you an email with all the details like we did this time, and hopefully we'll see you all then. That'd be great. So goodbye.
Well, thank you. Bye, Charles. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Charles.
Thank you all. Nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely to see you, Amira. Really lovely.
Thank you. We'll see you again. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.